In this video, we'll take an Excel invoice template and turn it into a simple system that we can use to manage our invoices and easily share them with our customers. Over the years, I've tried a lot of invoicing tools. They have a lot of bells and whistles, but more often than not, you end up having to conform to a specific template. After unsuccessfully trying to bend a lot of those systems to exactly match my needs, what I ended up doing is creating my own simple system that I can easily adapt to any situation that I'm in. The beauty of this approach is that you can take the exact format of an invoice that you need in your business and then easily add some additional features in Excel that would allow you to quickly and easily prepare new invoices, export them in PDF and share them with your customers, and all of this without having to pay for an invoicing tool or relying on something free that usually doesn't get a lot of support. This template that we're developing is available to download for free, and the link is in the description down below. Let's open Excel and dive straight in. Here we have an Excel template for an invoice, and this is the original. I'm gonna keep it here for like a reference. You have the typical elements of an invoice: bill to, issued by, the invoice number, date, what the invoice is all about. I have a version here where I colored specific things that I want to focus on. So everything that's in green is for your company. So you can just fill it in and it's gonna be left as is, but everything in yellow represents elements that you need to change every time you issue an invoice. You have to keep track of the numbers. In specific countries, you cannot even skip numbers. So if you skip a number by mistake, that may be an issue. You need all your details for the company that you're billing to, the content of the invoice, and everything else. And those are the things we want to be able to select from a drop-down. To do that, first let's go to View and go to Normal. So we have a normal Excel spreadsheet that we can work with. And then I'll show you how to make sure that only the invoice is printed at the end. In order to automate the whole thing, we'll add two tables. I'm gonna call those customers, and it's gonna be in a separate sheet. So I just pasted those here. These are the columns that we need, and this is just some dummy data. So what I have is the customer ID, the name, address, registration ID, VAT ID, and some contact details. I also have, because where I'm based in Europe, we have specific circumstances where we don't charge VAT based on different articles of the VAT Act. So I have this as an option here to provide a reason why VAT is 0, or I can just provide the VAT, and you can adjust this. This can be sales tax instead of VAT, or you can remove it altogether. The whole purpose is to grab the exact invoice template that works for you, taking this, adjusting it, and then linking it to the customers table and also the invoices table that we'll build in a second, and being able to automate it exactly the way you need it to be automated. Next, let's add another one, invoices or invoice details, and here I'll just paste some invoice details. So we have the invoice number, and you see that we can have multiple lines per invoice, so it's gonna have the same number and the same date, the customer ID that it relates to. Here I'm tracking hours, but this can be number of items, or it can be altogether gone, and it can be just a flat amount. And if I go back to customers, you see that I have a hourly rate, and this is the hourly rate I have negotiated with the specific customer. So when I'm invoicing, I'm keeping track of hours in this scenario and then applying this hourly rate to come up with the total invoice amount. And for each invoice, I also have the payment method listed here. You can go one step further, have those be drop downs with data validation. We took a look at that in the previous video. I'm gonna link it up here. You can do the same for the customer ID. It can be a drop-down list that's linked to the customers here. But in order to keep it simple, let's just say that we have the invoice details like that and our customers like that. Now we need to start building this thing here. And the way I want it to work is I want to have a drop down that allows me to select the invoice that should be loaded. So I'll be selecting the invoice number, and every time I add the new number here, it would appear in the drop down. To do that, I'll add a few lines up here at the top, and I'll say load invoice, and here will be my drop down. Format those a bit, and then this one, that's going to be my drop down. Let's make it a bit more prominent so it's really visible. What I want to use here is data validation, and I want to have the list option. And as we saw in the last video, we cannot directly link to the column of a table. We need to use the indirect formula. So this table here is what we want to have in our data validation rule. We want to have the invoice number and be able to pick one of the invoice numbers from the drop-down. If you go to table design, you see that I've named this table invoices, and then my column is invoice number. So all I need to do here is go to the data tab, select data validation, list, and then I just need to say equal indirect, open bracket, open quotation marks, and just say invoices, and in square bracket, invoice number, exactly like I have it in the other tab, close quotation, close bracket. We're not able to directly link to the column, but we can use the indirect formula to pretty much parse it. If I hit OK now, I have the drop down and it has all the invoices here. In order for all the yellow fields to be populated, we need to load some details, and we can do it directly, but it's much easier to do it here on the side. So I'll grab those two columns and I will be able to hide those later. Then here I'll say loaded details, just format it a bit, and we need the following things. We need the customer ID that we're gonna grab from the invoice. Then with the customer ID, we're gonna grab the customer name, which we'll need here. Then we'll have the address, have the postal code, we'll have the city, the country, the registration number of the company, the VAT ID, the contact person, the VAT percentage, no VAT reason if there's one, and also the hourly rate. So those are details from the customer that will be loading based off on the invoice. Let's start doing this. Here, it's quite simple. You can use XLOOKUP. It will be a bit faster, but if you're not using the latest versions of Excel, you can use a plain old VLOOKUP. We'll be looking for this invoice number, and we'll be looking for it within the invoice details. If you come here to the edge of the table, you get this black arrow that would select the entire column, and you see it up there, invoices, invoice number, and we're gonna drag and select the first three columns, comma, we want the third column, and we want it to be an exact match, and now we have the customer ID. So if I change the invoice number now, it's gonna grab the relevant customer ID. Then the customer name, gonna be a VLOOKUP based off of this value here. Gonna fix it with F4, and then my array, just gonna grab from here again and select the entire table all the way until it just says customers up here. So this is all the data in the table, comma, and then I want the second column is my company name, and again I want an exact match. Let's zoom in a bit here. It's a bit easier to see. Then we can grab this and copy it down over all of those, and it would all say LexCorp LLC because it's looking for the second column. But as we know that the order of the columns is pretty much the same as we listed them here, we can just go in and change this to 3. It's gonna be the street address. Change this to 4. It's gonna be the postal code. 5 is the city. 6 is the country, 7 is the registration number, 8 is the VAT ID, then 9 would be the person, 10 would be the email, the 10th column, so we're gonna skip it, we're gonna go to 11, which is the VAT percentage, 12 is the reason for no VAT, which here comes up as 0 because we have a VAT percentage, and then 13 is my hourly rate of 75. I'm gonna make those here. I'm not gonna bother formatting them because I'll just go into data, group those, and then I can hide them. Let's leave them like that for now. If we change the invoice now, let's say 11, you see that all those details are updated, and we now have a reason for not charging VAT. We can now start linking those. So my company name will be customer name. My street address will be the address here. You see here that I have the postal code and the city. I'm gonna grab the postal code. I'm gonna use ampersand to concatenate. I'm gonna have a space in quotations and then concatenate the city. I'm gonna get the city, and this is gonna be the country. Then my company registration number, gonna be this. and my VAT number. I'm not gonna directly link it because it would come up as 0. I'm gonna say if this is different than 0, then give me this. Otherwise, leave it empty, or yeah, just leave it empty. I can go with any, but empty is fine. And then my contact person is gonna be my contact here. And now we can grab those, holding Control, and remove the yellow because those are now automatically populated based off of the data here. You can also remove the green here because those are our company details. And we need the invoice number. We have it up here, but we're not gonna directly link it because at least where I'm at, you have to show the leading zeros up to 10 digits. We're gonna use the text formula. We're gonna pass this value, and then we're gonna pass a format, which is gonna be 10 zeros. And that way it would still take this number, but always add the leading zeros. Okay, here's the invoice number. Then the date. In order to get the date, we'll just use a VLOOKUP and grab it from the first instance of the specific invoice. So if one invoice has multiple lines with the same date, just grab the first date. Say VLOOKUP, grab the invoice number, then go to invoice details, grab the first 2 columns from invoice number to date, grab the second column of those, and we have the date. Time of supply can be different if you're, let's say, shipping goods or things like that, so you can have a separate column for that, but in my case, it's just the same thing. And now we can clear the highlight here because those are also done. For the items here, we'll use the filter formula to list everything in here. I usually just keep it at 5 lines because I rarely go over that, but you can always add more lines if you need to. So this here will be equal to filter, and then we want to filter the item descriptions from the invoice details. So we'll grab the item description. This is what we want to show, and our criteria to show it, our include property here, is we want the invoice number to match. So we'll grab the invoice number, we'll say equals, go back to our invoice and grab this here. Close the brackets, enter, and now we have the same thing basically, but if let's say we pick invoice 1 has 2 rows, we should get 2 rows here. So let's try it out. Here, 1, and that's it. Keep in mind that this is what's known as a spill formula. You see a little highlight here. So if you have more items that can be held in here, so if you, let's say, list 6 items, it's gonna list the 6th one here. But if you have 7 items, it's gonna give you a spill error, so there's no way to miss an item. Next, let's fix the quantities, and here we'll use a SUMIFs formula. And what we want to SUMIF here is the hours, the quantity of work that we've done. So we'll go to invoice details, select the hours column, and our first criteria range is that we want the invoice number to match. So we want to only aggregate the hours for this invoice, this specific invoice, and the criteria is the invoice number. And then our second criteria is this item description here. So we go to invoice details again, select the item description column, and our second criteria is our item description here. Enter, and now we have the quantity for this specific item in this specific invoice. So for invoice 1, financial model development, if we come here and we'll see that for invoice 1, financial model development, we have 10. If I copy it down for data processing, it should be 15. I'm gonna come here, and before copying this, I need to fix this invoice number. I'm gonna select it here, press F4 to fix it, and now I can copy this down with Control D, and you see that for data processing, we now have 15. For my unit cost, I have it here, my hourly rate. What I wanna say is if the quantity is different than 0, then give me this hourly rate. Otherwise, give me 0. I can then copy this, and I need to fix this J14 here so that it always references the hourly rate. I can then copy this to the bottom with Control D, and my price is the multiplication of those 2, and then I have my VAT base, which is the sum of those up here. Okay, this is done. Let's remove the highlight here. And now for the VAT, you see I highlighted it because it must reflect whether there's a VAT percentage or not. So the formula here, you can just grab the VAT percentage and multiply it by our VAT base. It's gonna say 0 in this case. We copy this formatting down here, and my balance due is the same, the combination of the two. I'm gonna remove the highlighting for the payment information. Now this is one thing that you cannot easily automate. You can type in some complex formula to convert the number to words, but in my use case, I just type it out every time, but still it's much simpler than having to fill everything and making sure that you're updating everything correctly. So I'm just gonna leave this one, and I might just note on the side, check manually, color it in red, and this won't be part of our invoice when we're printing it. Okay, let's remove this formatting. Here I want to show the reason for no VAT if there is one. So I'll say if J13 is my no VAT reason. If this is different than 0, because remember, if there's nothing, it comes up as a 0 with the VLOOKUP. If this is different than 0, then I want to have reason for the absence of VAT, and this will be concatenated with the reason up here. Otherwise, I want this to be empty, so just say nothing. Okay, let's remove the highlighting here. See, we have Article 1 of the VAT Act, and this is what's shown here. And then for the payment method, you're gonna have payment method, and we'll concatenate this with the payment method, which is actually in our invoice details. So we can just VLOOKUP it, and the lookup value will be the invoice number. And then if you go to invoice details and select from invoice number, pretty much the whole table invoices, we'll see that this is selected again. You see at the bottom that it's 6 columns, so 6, and I want an exact match. And here I have the payment method. Then bill to, similarly, I'm gonna say equal bill to, and concatenate it with my contact up here. Remove the highlight and remove the highlight here, since this is always me. And that's almost all of it. So right now, if we change the invoice here, you see that there are different things being loaded and everything is working correctly. So for example, for invoice 15, we have such and such quantity at this hourly rate. That's the price, the total. We have VAT at 29%. That's the balance due. And the only thing we need to do is to check and update this manually. If you go ahead and print this right now, it actually doesn't look too bad, but it has those details on the second page. It also shows this load invoice. So what I want to do is go to View, Page Break, and then I can just adjust what I want to be included in the print area. Do it like that, so that only the invoice is included. I can then go back to my normal view, work with it, add new details down here, pick the new invoice, and if we hit print, it's only the invoice itself. You can print that on paper or save it as a PDF, or if you're using Adobe, you can even directly create a PDF from here. And that's it, a really simple way to grab any invoice template that you're currently using, or even build one that exactly matches what you need. And then with some simple formulas, you can convert this template to a mostly automated system that works exactly for you. There you have it, a quick and easy way to turn any invoice template into a small invoicing tool that you can use for your own business. Using such a template for invoicing still requires some manual work, but in my experience, it's much better to build something simple that matches your exact needs than trying to figure out how to bend a bigger tool to your needs when it was probably never intended for your exact use case. Thanks for watching this video. Now go watch this one to learn why it's important for small businesses to keep track of what the big players in their industry are doing, and also get a great financial ratios analysis template for free.